What's next for a neighborhood under siege? We'll have to wait and see. Reporting live, Sadie Sinclair, Channel 7 News.
This is San Francisco.
Last year, we did an episode on APEC. Every 2 years, politicians and corporations get together and talk about how the US and Asia are gonna stay in control of global finance. Now it's the military's turn. All of July, about 25,000 soldiers and military administrators from 29 different countries around the Pacific Rim for RIMPAC, plus Israel, which was invited for the first time this year, even though Israel is not known for being a Pacific Rim adjacent country. Since the US is a sub for Israel, we thought, why not invite Daddy? These militaries are going to get together to explode some old naval ships, waste a ton of money, kill lots of birds and dolphins and whales while they're at it, and make local kids feel like they're under a state of siege every 2 years during these military exercises known as RIMPAC. Abbey Irodistan is with the Filipino anti-imperialist group BAYAN USA NorCal, which is joining Hawaiians for the first time on the mainland to call for an end to RIMPAC forever. If you like this podcast, please go to patreon.com/San Francisco, where you will find all of our past episodes. And you can also subscribe, just like Brooke, love you, Brooke, Ryan Varick, and Darcy Bell. Thank you all for becoming subscribers. Pretty soon, we're going to have some more content that's specifically for subscribers available to you there. Tofu, the editor of the podcast, just came up from San Jose to the studio apartment where I live in the Tenderloin, and we recorded a couple hours on the origins of the podcast. We also answered some questions from Patreon subscribers for the first time, and I wasn't sure if we would have to make up some questions like I know other podcasts do, but you all came through, so thank you. Abbey is next. Abbey from BAYAN NorCal is here, and were you at the protest on Sunday, Abbey?
Yes, I was. I was emceeing, actually.
Oh, tight. Yeah, I was only there for the very beginning, but there were a bunch of people that came out to San Francisco to target the embassies of the Philippines, Japan, and Israel, which are all involved in this ridiculous thing that happens every 2 years called RIMPAC. Abbey, would you do the honors? First off, maybe you could talk about why this is a topic that is particularly annoying to you, and also, how you got involved.
Yeah, so for RIMPAC, it's basically this huge joint military exercise that's done between countries like the US, Japan, Philippines, a lot of different countries that are on the rim of the Pacific Ocean. But even this year, they actually included Israel, which is not anywhere near the Pacific Ocean for the first time, right? Which is absolutely, it's already frustrating that this RIMPAC exercise happens. It happens every 2 years, and it happens in occupied Hawaii. And it's really just an opportunity for all of these countries to strengthen, and particularly the US, to strengthen its military presence and dominance over the Asia-Pacific region. And so as BAYAN NorCal, we're an alliance of progressive Filipino organizations in the Northern California region, but we're also under BAYAN USA, which is an even larger alliance of many different Filipino organizations that are engaging in the Cancel RIMPAC campaign to really expose the role of US imperialism in strengthening its grip on the Asia-Pacific region, particularly for Filipino people. We've been seeing so much tension rise in the Philippines, particularly in the West Philippine Sea. There's been clashes between China and Philippine Coast Guard, Filipino fishermen, even resulting in physical altercations. And we do definitely condemn China's aggression against the Filipino fishermen and Filipinos in general, but we also are not naive to the fact that the US is the one instigating all of it, posturing itself against China in the Philippines, using the Philippines as a pawn in this chess game of war, and growing the tension. And so we've been participating in the Cancel RIMPAC campaign, and BAYAN USA is one of the main conveners of it because we recognized that the ongoing military games and military exercises that the US has been leading, not just in the Philippines, but with very many different countries in the Asia Pacific, is really dragging our people into a war and the people of the Asia Pacific region into a war. And so even for a lot of the native Hawaiians who have been consistently protesting against RIMPAC for decades now, are also recognizing like we here on, in the US on the mainland also have a role to support their struggle as well, because Hawaii is particularly one of the places that gets the most impact from RIMPAC. Wildlife is severely impacted, environment, women, the native and working class people of Hawaii. So it's also our expression of solidarity with Hawaii and the people who are there who have been taking up this struggle. And we really want to strengthen and amplify the anti-war movement because as it is now, the US is trying as much as it can to strengthen its grip, especially in the Asia Pacific region.
Yeah, super well put. And we'll get into some of those issues that you mentioned that I think make this particular military exercise like something that so many different struggles are connected by. I feel like it's a really good target for anyone who considers himself progressive or on the left, because it just combines so many of these like bad actors that we'll get into. And I also, appreciate how you positioned the US versus China sort of question, because especially lately, it feels like there is like this sort of not sort of like, I do think it's like kind of like a racist way that people are positioning China against the US. And so like if you have any kind of critique of some of what the US is doing, whether in Hawaii or the Pacific Rim or elsewhere, then there are people who will say that you are like sort of an operator for China, an op for China, whether or not you know it. That's the argument I've heard recently that I have to say, I feel is like a very weak one, but it does keep coming up. With RIMPAC, as mentioned, it's this huge convening of different militaries, 29 different militaries, plus Israel. What does that look like? Like I know that there are some missiles that are sent off. What is RIMPAC?
Yeah, it is things like sending out missiles, practicing blowing up warships, practicing detonating certain types of bombs. Something that RIMPAC likes to, and this is like how all military exercises like to like framework it, is also disaster relief or being prepared for when disaster happens and like the military needs to respond.
Humanitarian aid, sort of. Yeah,
that just like complete BS, honestly. But it's really like it's both an arms show and an arms practice. They're sinking warships for no good reason. They're shooting missiles for no good reason. Even like they have basically complete ability and permission to kill as many birds as they want if it means they can practice these different weapons testing. And they have different like tanks that they are developing. And something to note too is if there is like this impending war that breaks out between the US and China, it is most likely going to be a war by sea. for the most part. And so they are strengthening their ability to, launch missiles from the ocean, or to sink ships, or to, submarines, and different other like amphibious tanks, and things like that. So it's really like, yes, it's practicing war, but it's also already kind of enacting war in a sense, because at the end of the day, the people who are living in the areas that they're practicing these military exercises already feel like they're experiencing war. When the bombs drop and the houses shake, like, the children don't know a difference between, oh, this is just an exercise, versus like, oh, you're experiencing war already. That's definitely the case. RIMPAC doesn't necessarily happen in the Philippines, even though the Armed Forces of the Philippines participates. But a lot of military exercises happen in the Philippines too, and that's the feedback we've heard from the everyday Filipino people on the ground, is that they're terrified. They think they're at war already because of how the U.S. military has been heightening its aggression, and so RIMPAC is just another opportunity for them to do so, and then to them to also like flex on China a little bit, and try to intimidate them even more.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, people probably know that the military industrial complex is the number one, budget resource sucker in the United States of America. And just to think of like how much money the military has, it's like they're straight up like getting rid of old equipment, exploding old equipment, exploding old warships that they deem to be obsolete because they just have so much money that they can. And yeah, like you mentioned, and one of the ways that I've seen RIMPAC talked about is like the ecological damage that it brings. You mentioned how there's no real like limit that the EPA or any other government institution puts on how many birds can be killed over the course of the few weeks every 2 years that RIMPAC happens. Are there other ecological kind of disasters that RIMPAC brings that people might be interested in?
Yeah. I mean, wildlife is definitely a huge part of it. I mean, we talk about save the turtles all the time, but one of the turtles' biggest enemies is the military. The different ways that they like detonate bombs or drop bombs in the ocean, they don't have any consideration for what's already living there. Things like the coral reefs, or turtles, the fishes that live there. And then on top of that, they have no consideration for the waste that they produce as well. So there can be like toxic poisoning. That's always an issue in Hawaii, actually, is the poisoning of their water. They don't have like access to clean drinking water, and it's one of the basic like issues of many Hawaiian people, is that they don't have that ability to access clean drinking water. The air is polluted, and the Hawaii Islands are, they're not like very big either. So it can have far-reaching impact beyond just where they're practicing the RIMPAC exercises. And so, it can have effects on wildlife, effects on environment, and then of course effects on the people who live there, who then experience maybe health concerns, again, the poisoned drinking water, etc.
Yeah. Like I read a little bit about like the use of sonar and like these really loud explosions that happen underwater that really screw with the ears of sea mammals such as dolphins and whales, to the point where as a result of these sonar sounds like messing with their messing with their ears and their sense of hearing, they end up not being able to navigate, because that's like how they get around, is like sound underwater. I know that I'm not saying that in like a scientifically probably completely accurate way, but yeah, so it really is super harmful to all types of wildlife, as you said. You also mentioned if these war games, these war exercises are happening, it creates this sense of like normalcy around
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this is just, this is our everyday to the kids growing up in the middle of that, while maybe they don't have clean water that they can like really easily access that's outside of a water bottle. Yeah, it's super good point. And like you mentioned the like waste, the physical waste. Could you talk about the like resource waste thinking? It's hard for me to even like picture like the enormity of like all of these different militaries getting together. It's like 25,000 soldiers or people in the militaries of the
Mm-hmm.
29 countries that are represented. Um, that that obviously is very costly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah, it is such a huge waste. And speaking from honestly, I don't know exactly how much money they're willing to spend on RIMPAC and to spend on these military exercises. But when you look at the budget for militarization, when you look at the budget for like US military spending, the US military has the highest spending out of like the next 10 countries combined.
Wow.
I think even more than that, actually.
Yeah.
And then when you look at countries that are smaller, who are a lot poorer, like the Philippines, the budget spending for military is also completely disproportionate to what the people actually need, right? So basic needs that are similar across all countries, right? Access to housing, access to food, to health, to education, those are all put on the back burner at the expense of increasing weaponry, increasing military bases, militarization. And then even when you consider like the actual benefits given to soldiers or veterans, they're really not given that great of an incentive to stay in the military. Like they're still given crumbs, honestly. Like sure, maybe they get some access to free education, but how much is that going to be worth if like they are left with PTSD and can't hold a steady job and things like that? And so it's this misprioritization of what the people need, and placing it all on the military. When you look at any country, actually, you can see the difference in the bloatedness of the military spending. And another campaign that we have been very much in connection to and happened pretty close to some of the RIMPAC activities, is our Resist NATO campaign, or resisting the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And that is a US-led military alliance that one of their objectives is for all of the countries that are part of NATO or are partnered with NATO to increase military spending, to spend more on
Yeah.
military spending, right? And so we're seeing like this shift that's been ongoing for many years, since World War II, to strengthen the military budget spending, um, prioritize it over basic social services, over the basic needs of the people. And then when you consider like the waste, like they're literally sinking whole ass warships. Like they're sinking
Mm-hmm.
these huge warships. They're setting off these bombs that have different like minerals and chemicals in them, and having, they spend a lot of money to produce that too. They spend a lot of money
Yeah.
to pay for the research to produce that, and all of that money could 100% be better used for
Absolutely.
literally anything else at this point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, anytime politicians start to speak about like austerity and about how
Hmm.
we need to like narrow the budgets and there's not enough money for social services, like I think we just need to like keep finding new creative ways to like talk back and be like, well, there would be money for literally anything if you just made some cuts to the military, or in the case of like localities, municipalities, like the police, are also like, usually the top budget consumer. And so like it's anytime someone brings up austerity, I just have to like I have to push back. I can't really like I can't ever see like the amount of the many billions that go into the military. Like we may unfortunately see like $1 trillion budget for the military before too long. You know, you see that and it's like you have to laugh in the face of anyone who's like, oh no, we don't have enough money for healthcare or for public schools because we know that the money exists.
Yeah. And even for the Philippines too, like the Philippines is one of the largest receivers of US military aid in the Asia Pacific region. It is the largest receiver of US military aid. And something that happened this past few months, Marcos met with Biden, and magically after that meeting, there's this new thing called the Philippines Enhanced Resiliency Act, or the PERA Act, that wants to send $2.5 billion more in US military aid to the Philippines over the next 5 years. And then there's this US representative in San Diego, Daryl Issa, who wants to add another $500 million on top of that already $2.5 billion, right? And so we, like in Bayan, we see how much, our families had to sacrifice everything to come to this country, and then we pay taxes to this country, and then our tax dollars go back to the killing and the plunder of our people. And so that's part of our campaign work, is to really reject the PERA Act. It's also so sinister that they call it the PERA Act, because PERA in Tagalog is money, or translates to money. And so it's just like why is this PERA for the military and not for the people, right? And we've been campaigning for the Philippine Human Rights Act, and have been hearing a lot of crickets from a lot of different representatives who have definitely been lobbied by our organizations on the ground. And now that there's been crickets for all these years, the PERA Act is being introduced. So it's just another way that like all the US militarization aid for itself, and then the amount of US military aid they send to places like the Philippines, places like Israel, who are using that military aid, those weapons, the personnel, to commit atrocities against the people.
Hello everyone, Tofu here, co-producer of San Francisco, here to talk to you about how you can support the show. If you have the extra funds, you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/San Francisco. There you'll find all of our past episodes, transcripts, and frequent community posts. Our paid members will have early access to episodes a couple days before they go live on our public platforms, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and we'll have their display name shouted out in the end card of our YouTube videos and our monthly Instagram post. And new paid members will have their names shouted out in the intro of our episodes in the week following their subscription sign-up. Go ahead and follow us on our TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube channel for more additional content and to get more info about the show. Lastly, if you're listening to this on audio platforms, go ahead and give us a rating. And if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and like the video. All of your support is greatly appreciated and it really helps us out. Okay, not so shameless plug done again. And now back to the episode.
So there was a protest in San Francisco recently. I know that at the start of RIMPAC, which actually maybe began at the very end of June, is that correct? Yes. Down in San Diego, people went to, like, I don't know if everybody knows this, but like San Diego has like one of the largest, like, is it San Pedro? Is one of the largest naval bases in the continental US. And so people actually went down to try to, do some disruption down there. What else? Yeah. How has the RIMPAC, the anti-RIMPAC struggle looked this year and in the past?
Yeah, so this is the first time that the Cancel RIMPAC campaign is taking place on the mainland. So like I mentioned before, Native Hawaiians have been protesting against RIMPAC, but this is the first time that our organizations and other organizations reached out and said, we want to fight with you. We want to take your struggle to the mainland and fight against RIMPAC here. And so in San Diego, yeah, it's highly militarized, it's I had only been to San Diego like once or twice before and never even really noticed before. I was probably young too, how much the military is just like ingrained into the everyday lives of the people in San Diego. And so there was a counter summit that was held at UC San Diego, which I was also learning about how UC San Diego is like one of the most like militarized, not militarized, but like highly involved with the military UC campuses out of the entire UC system. And there was a counter summit. We heard different keynote speeches from Hawaiians who have been waging the struggle, different panelists from all different national liberation movements, indigenous peoples movements, anti-imperialist movements, solidarity movements, who came together and shared their expertise, their understanding of RIMPAC and why they're participating in the campaign. There was all these different workshops that people were able to attend. I attended one from the International Women's Alliance that talked about RIMPAC's impact on women. But yeah, so many different sectors and communities who came together, talked about the impacts of RIMPAC. And then the next day, there was a huge mass mobilization against RIMPAC. They marched in downtown San Diego towards this huge warship that's actually used for tourists. So tourists can go on and I don't know, pretend like have a military fantasy, I guess. But the RIMPAC mobilization was able to be there to assert their demands, their outrage, and their issues with RIMPAC, alongside so many different people from all over the country who flew in to support the campaign. And it's ongoing in Hawaii. So a lot of the warships left San Diego and are sailing to Hawaii. And so we have some of our comrades there who are also continuing to confront RIMPAC where they can, holding political education about RIMPAC, reaching out to more of the Native Hawaiians who have been experiencing RIMPAC for decades now and want to join the movement. And it's just been really great because we've been able to really link up and see how we can actually, across so many different movements, across so many different struggles, see where our common enemies are, which is really at the end of the day is US imperialism. But in the particular targets like RIMPAC, we're able to connect and be sharp and make an organized blow together. So yeah, there's ongoing actions. NorCal held our Echo action on Sunday because we recognize too, like the different multinational corporations, tech corporations, et cetera, that are based in the Bay Area, including the different embassies and consulates who are expressions of these governments that are participating in RIMPAC. We should have like no peace, and more people should understand the different ramifications of RIMPAC on the people, on the environment, the wildlife. So yeah, it's an ongoing campaign, and RIMPAC ends towards the end of July, but that doesn't mean our movement ends. It just means in 2 years when it comes back, we'll be even stronger and get to the point where we can actually cancel RIMPAC.
Yeah, and I mean, these sort of like flexes of imperialism by the US, the Philippines, Japan, other countries, these are happening pretty commonly. We did an episode last fall around APEC, which is the Economic Council like convention that happens also, I believe, every 2 years. Talked to some people at BAYAN at the City College chapter here in San Francisco. And I mean, it's a lot of like of the same undercurrents, probably a lot of the same people organizing, and hopefully like as these imperial powers like flex their military might, I think people who are like getting wise to it and learning about it, like are hopefully also like similarly getting like able to like flex their organizing skills that they're only gonna compound over like
Mhm.
the next years as like I mean APEC, which had been happening for many years, like it's good to see like people's like eyes on these international like really like global struggles to end imperialism again that I haven't really like been too aware of like since the like since Seattle and the like World Bank IMF like
Mm. Mhm.
work that was like at the beginning of the 2000s. So it's good to see it like bubbling up again. So you're in Santa Cruz. I'm in San Francisco. People that are going to be listening to this are all over. How can people get plugged in to the work? Or, you know, like, and as you mentioned, RIMPAC has like, by the time this episode comes out, um, it will be wrapping up within a week or so. But yeah, just wondering how people could get involved.
Yeah, we always say like if you're agitated, then you should join an organization. So I mean, if you're Filipino, of course, we would welcome you to BAYAN NorCal. We have so many different chapters. We have about 12 chapters throughout the Bay Area, spanning as far north as Sacramento and as far south as Santa Cruz. And then we have some chapters in the East Bay area. There's some in South Bay, a lot in the San Francisco, Daly City areas. But the best way to really get plugged in is through an organization. If you're not Filipino, there's plenty of organizations that we work with too. If you know are agitated about the Philippines issues, like there's the Committee for Human Rights in the Philippines. There's a chapter in San Francisco, a chapter in Oakland. If you're agitated, you know, if you're part of any struggle or even like start your own organization, we also work really closely. So BAYAN NorCal is an alliance of Filipino organizations, but we're also a part of the International League of People's Struggles, or ILPS. And that's a more anti-imperialist alliance of organizations who are wanting to strengthen our anti-imperialist united front here in the Bay Area and NorCal as a whole, because there are so many places and so many people who are, you know, I think you're right. It's been a while since we've had like this kind of wave of anti-war, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist movement building. The US empire worked overtime in trying to dissuade people and pretend that things are okay. But you know, different global situations like the pandemic, the ongoing genocide in Gaza, and then just like how much that has opened up the door for everyone to learn about how much the empire is really decaying and falling apart, and people's lived experiences too, right? We lived through the 2007 financial crisis. Arguably, we're living through another financial crisis now. People don't want to. They don't want to say it. They don't want to say, "Oh, it's just normal for gas to be $7 a gallon," you know.
Right.
But it's not normal, right? The cost of living is not normal. It's inflation. It's part of the financial crisis and a feature of the decaying US empire. And so if you want to be a part of seeing an end to the empire, highly recommend getting organized, finding an organization. And if you don't have the ability, support the organizations, right? Financially is always a great part, right? Like we are grassroots orgs. We don't have access to the resources that the empire does. They got billions and trillions of dollars now under their belt. And so we gotta keep our movement sustained. You can support us through any, you know, even just like in solidarity with our organizations when these different issues pop up, like RIMPAC and NATO. There are always people who are going to be organizing around them. There are people organizing around the RNC convention now and are going to be mobilizing to the DNC convention in August. And they're right, like now is more the time than ever to get plugged into an org. We're going to experience the American elections, and it's already a hot mess. So
Yeah.
the best way to stay safe too is to be in an org where you can trust the people. They're people you can meet and interact with on a daily basis, and not some random politician who tells you what to do. And so, yeah, that's part of it. I would recommend everyone to get organized, and if you don't get organized, get as close to an organization as you can, because we don't know the future, but we can make a really big part in deciding the future if we all like come together, overcome our differences, and strengthen our movement.
Yeah, super good advice. And as a Japanese American, I have to like take several bows to like Filipino orgs that have like been doing this work like very organized beyond like what some of the JA Japanese American organizations have been doing for some time. So much respect. Actually have some Japanese American comrades who are part of the council, the Affinity Council that you mentioned, to support human rights in the Philippines here in the Bay Area. Also, some people with Nikkei resistors, Japanese American org up here, that's trying to support the work that you all have been doing for a minute. And I guess if you would like, or you can also say no, if people could follow you online, is there a way, any of the social media sites that you might be open to people following you on?
We are all one movement. So I'll plug, if you want to follow on Instagram, we have an IG. It's at BAYAN USA _NorCal. We are pretty up to date on that Instagram page. Folks can follow it. There's also the overall BAYAN USA Instagram, where people can, again, keep up to date. There's always different things happening nationally, webinars that are happening, and their website is also bayanusa.org. And then also I'm part of Gabriela, which is like the Filipino women's org. So you can also follow. And then we also have a website, gabrielausa.org. So that's where you can, I'm around there.
Tight. Thank you so much, Abby. Really stoked to see the work continue. And just thank you for the work. Thank you for listening to Sad Francisco. I am Toshio Meronek, and my co-producer is Tofu Estolas. Patreon.com/Sad Francisco is where you can find our past episodes and transcripts, and it's also where you can help us out with a donation. And if you do, it comes with some benefits like getting the episodes a few days early, and our gratitude for allowing us to keep making this podcast, which we love to do. See you next time in Sad Francisco.